problem.
Senator Santorum, would you send troops back into Iraq right now?
Well, I wouldn't right now,
president.
but what I would say is that Newt's right. We need someone who has a strong vision for the region, and we have not had that with this president. He has been making mistakes at every turn in Iran, in Egypt, I would argue Libya, Syria, Israel. All of these places, he has made mistakes on the ground that have shown the people in that region that we are the weak horse. That is something that cannot happen because it will cause events like you're seeing in the Straits of Hormuz. There will be push. America is soft, and so they can be pushed around. That's what this administration has done. They did it by withdrawing from Iraq, and as Newt just said, you want to see what's going to happen, John, if we get out of Afghanistan? Let's just wait the next few weeks and months and see how things turn out when the United States isn't there, and see how consequential our efforts were for the stability of that region.
So how long do you want to wait, Rick? How long do you want to wait?
To the security of our country is ensured. That's what the job of the commander-in-chief is. And you make that decision, not the generals, you make that decision based on an analysis of understanding how virulent the threat of radical Islam is. And you confront that threat not just militarily, and importantly, not just militarily. You confront it first by being honest with the American public about what this threat is. This president has sanitized every defense document, everything. There's no, the word radical Islam doesn't appear anywhere. Why? Because we are fighting we're trying to fight this politically correct war and not being honest with the American public as to who the enemy is, how virulently they are, and why they hate us and what we must do to stop
Governor Perry, we know you have differences with President Obama, but who's got the better of this argument right here between Senator Santorum and Governor Huntsman?
Well, I think that I would send troops back into Iraq, because I will tell you, I think we start talking with the Iraqi individuals there. The idea that we allow the Iranians to come back into Iraq and take over that country with all of the treasure, both in blood and money, that we have spent in Iraq, because this president wants to kowtow to his liberal leftist base and move out those men and women. He could have renegotiated that time frame. I think it is a huge error for us. We're going to see Iran, in my opinion, move back in at literally the speed of light. They're going to move back in, and all of the work that we've done, every young man that has lost his life in that country will have been for nothing, because we've got a president that does not understand what's going on in that region.
Mr. Speaker, do you agree send back troops into Iraq right now?
Well, no, but let me put it in context. I was very honored today to have Bud McFarland come to introduce me at our Veterans Rally. Bud was for 5 years Ronald Reagan's national security advisor, and I worked with him in the 80s on the strategy to defeat the Soviet Empire. Here's the key thing to remember. If you're worried about the Iranians in Iraq, develop a strategy to replace the Iranian dictatorship, and Iraq will be fine. If you want to stop Wahhabism, get an American energy policy so no American president ever again bows to a Saudi king, and then you can put pressure on the Saudis, because you have enough American energy to stop them.
Governor Romney, you've said that you would not send troops in right now, but give us a sense of the trigger. What would it take for you to send troops back in?
It's a very high hurdle. The decision to send our men and women into harm's way is one which would be made with great seriousness and sobriety
What kinds
and
of
concern.
things?
Well, you can't begin to say what the specific circumstances would be, but it would have to require significant, dramatic American interests. You'd have to have a president that explained those interests to the American people, that also indicated how we're going in. We'd go in with exceptional force. We would indicate how success would be defined, how we would define also when we were completed, how we'd get our troops out, and what would be left behind. The president didn't do that in Libya. The president hasn't done that anywhere. I find it amazing that we have troops in harm's way around the world, and in Afghanistan right now, in Iraq in the first 3 years of this president's term. He doesn't go on TV and talk to the American people every month about the sacrifice being made by these men and women. I find it extraordinary that a very few number of families are paying the price of freedom in America. So the hurdle to actually put in our troops in harm's way is very, very high. And the test is America's interests, our security interests, and they have to be involved in a very significant way to deploy our troops.
Well, I want to give Congressman Paul a chance to weigh in here, because foreign policy is something that a lot of people think is your Achilles heel when it comes to getting elected. You've said that you wouldn't have authorized the raid to get Osama bin Laden. You think that a nuclear Iran is really none of our business. How do you reconcile that when part of your job as president would be to preserve
I think
national security?
I think that's a misquote. I don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I voted to go after bin Laden, so that takes care of that. But this business about when to go in, I don't think it's that complicated. I think we've made it much more complicated than it should be. Yes, the president is the commander in chief, but he's not the king. And that's why we fought a revolution, not to have a king and decide when we go to war. We would have saved ourselves a lot of grief if we only had gone to war in a proper manner. And the proper manner is the people elect congressmen and senators to make a declaration of war, and then we become the commander in chief and we make these decisions. But we went into Afghanistan, we went into Iraq, and now we're in Pakistan. We're involved in so many countries. Now they want to move on to Syria, and they can't. There's some in Washington now can't wait till they start bombing Iran. We have to change this whole nature. Something happened this week I thought was so encouraging, and it reminds me of how we finally talked to the Chinese. I mean, they had killed 100 million of their own people, but we finally broke the ice by playing ping pong. But today, the American Navy picked up a bunch of fishermen, Iranian fishermen, that had been held by the pirates and released them. And they were so welcome. It was just a wonderful thing to happen. This is the kind of stuff we should deal with, not putting on sanctions. Sanctions themselves always leads up to war, and that's what we're doing. Eastern Europe is going to be destabilized if they don't have this oil, and this just pushes Iran right into the hands of the Chinese. So our policy may be well-intended, but it has a lot of downside, a lot of unintended consequences, and unfortunately, blowback.
A final word on this from Senator Santorum.
Well, Ron, if we had your foreign policy, there wouldn't have been a fleet there to pick up the Iranian fishermen. And the fact is, we did have a beneficial relationship with picking them up, and we have a very great relationship, and which should be much better, with the Iranian people. The Iranian people have come to the streets, have taken to the streets repeatedly, and still do, in trying to overthrow their government. And we had a president of the United States who stood silently by as thousands were killed on the streets and did nothing. In fact, he tacitly supported the results of the election. Ahmadinejad announced right after the election polls were closed that he won with 60-some% of the vote. And the president of the United States said, well, that sounds like a legitimate election. Obviously a Chicago politician. But that's not what a president of the United States does. He doesn't get up and condone this behavior and turn his back on the folks in the street. When I was in the United States Senate, I pushed to help those revolutionaries before the revolution, to give them resources, to make sure that we had the relationships. So, because I knew, and if you take polls, they do in Iran, the Iranian people love America because we stand up for the truth and say, and call evil, which is what Ahmadinejad and the mullahs are. We call evil what it is. And that's why they admire us, because we tell the truth. Now we just have to have a president that helps them do what's necessary, which is to turn that regime out.
We got to go to break. Much more to come. We'll be right back.
This is the ABC News Republican presidential primary debate, live from Manchester, New Hampshire.